Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 303 of the J Situation Podcast. I'm recording this on April 28th, 2026. How are all you wonderful folks doing? Yeah, it's great on this end. It's pretty good, other than the incessant rain. Not good for testing, apparently. No, it's really not. But but it's okay. We needed a break anyway. Was able to get to the range personal reasons this weekend. I have been shooting the USP a lot since now I'm carrying it. So I have that obligation where you got to practice with your carry gun. No, but it's so fun. I really love a good 45 pistol. It's so fun. 13 rounds really isn't too shabby. 12 plus 1 for 45. It's a pretty old gun, but I still think that holds up, with capability with modern stuff. I had actually forgotten how much I enjoyed carrying a full-size pistol. So I put another, I've been posting pictures of this thing. I put another photograph of it up for this episode just because, it's on my mind. I tend to practice unsuppressed for a while, and then when I go out and then I practice suppressed with it for my next round of shooting just to make sure I keep those chops and, the feel and accuracy for having a silencer on the gun when I shoot. And then I take the silencer off and I go unsuppressed again for my next few sessions there in my total range session. And that's my typical routine. I usually start unsuppressed, I go suppressed, and then I go unsuppressed again. And so I put two hammer fired guns in the photo. One is my carry USP, and the other one is a SIG P210, both with silencers, as is tradition. On today's episode, we're going to hit the technical discussion for last week's three-tiered report, the triple header on the Otter Creek Labs Universe-36 silencer, a truly universal multi-caliber silencer, not just in the name, but you can actually shoot whatever you want through it as long as it fits. So we're going to talk about the pluses and minuses and go through all of that data together, the hazard map brief and the report. And also I would say that please note, if you missed episode 302 and therefore you missed the intro talk for this silencer and this report, and you listen on YouTube, you will have to go to the other providers because YouTube pulled episode 302 and gave us another strike on our channel there for the podcast. We actually, and it was really puzzling. I was like, man, for the life of me, I could not figure out. I was like, why the heck did our video get pulled? Or our podcast episode is not even a video, it's just audio only. Why would they pull it? Was it the picture? Was it Otter Creek Labs? And I didn't know. And so we have a friend that is in Google, or used to be in Google, and they have some connections. And we spoke to them, and they were able to pull some strings and interrogate with the video ID actually that we gave them, which now you can't see it on YouTube, but they can in their system, in the Google system. They pulled it. And they told us that the reason YouTube deleted our episode and gave us a strike was due to mentioning the name of a certain website. And it was really interesting. And the reason that's happening is because YouTube's policies changed within the past couple of years, and they're really cracking down on links. And so now because with their AI tools, if you talk about a link and you say it becomes an actual link to them, and they will see that as a violation and pull it. This is all automated, guys. And the human reviewers that look at the appeals, they don't have the tenacity and the rigor to judge fairly. So so we're in YouTube jail for 2 weeks. So chances are, if you listen on YouTube, you will not hear this episode for a while. So Spotify, Apple, Pandora, Amazon, Smoke Signals, pewscience.com, our website, you can find the podcast there, okay, on every provider. Good luck. Let's get on with the show. I know that was a long thing here. If you've been here before, man, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us all these years. If you're new to the podcast, well, welcome. So glad to have you. We're going to talk about silencers in a technical fashion, like we tend to do. And there are timestamps in the episode description for you to skip wherever you would like, okay? Let me tell you really quick about the sponsors who make this podcast possible, all the companies that help us talk about physics. It's really cool. The first is Legion Athletics. Nothing you do, exercise, sports, really anything is worth doing without consistency. Legion Athletics can help you with that. Whey protein, pre-workout, post-workout, creatine, vitamins, minerals. Anything you need to supplement your health journey with regard to nutrition, they can help you with that. LegionAthletics.com. Use the code word PewScience, and you will buy one, get one 50% off your entire shopping cart, and keep using the code every time at Legion Athletics to get 20% cash back. Get strong. It's important. This episode is also helped out by the fine folks at Silencer Shop, and they have done a lot for consumers in the industry nationwide. You can use their kiosk, simplify your silencer purchasing process. No transfer fees, no paperwork errors, just you and your silencer with no drama. Truly, silencer ownership simplified. Also, folks that help us out, Top Gun Range Houston. They have the largest firearm rental fleet in the entire state of Texas. You can check out Kyle and his crew in Houston when you're on a business trip. Go have fun with your friends. Learn about suppressed small arms in person with the experts that use PewScience data there. They have a PewScience AI that helps educate their sales professionals on actual data and analysis to inform their customer base, which is insane. They did that all by themselves. Talk about taking initiative at Top Gun Range. Also, Capital Armory. Did you know Capital Armory is in Texas? They are. And if you live in one of the 42 states where silencers are legal, did you also know that they can even ship these things to your home? They can. They can. You can be shopping on your couch. You click a button, and then all of a sudden it shows up at your door. That's crazy. It really is that easy. Capital Armory, silencers directly to your door. And finally, this podcast is brought to you by the PewScience Laboratory. I'm the technical director of the lab. In the interest of public education, the lab sponsors this podcast for over 6 years now. It's getting a little bit insane. We're on episode 303. I didn't know if it would get this far, but clearly it has. Our goal is to push the silencer industry forward one test at a time. I think we've done that, and we continue to do that. I'm pretty proud of it. This is the home of the Silencer Sound Standard. 6 years running, 8 sections, the most in-depth and accurate silencer data analysis in the world. It really helps you manage human risk and your expectations for your purchases. So check it out at pewscience.com, and you can support this whole podcast and all the public testing we do in our lab, keep the lights on, by joining with the membership. We would be forever in your debt. We really appreciate that. All right. And if you don't want to send us any money at all or anything, that's fine. Don't. All you got to do is spread the word, let folks know that silencers and guns are awesome, and I think it'd be cool if more people learn about them. And I think this podcast and our website can help with that. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to do one topic for you today, and it's going to be the long 6 subtopic, multifaceted thing we typically do. Okay, and why don't we do that now? Why don't I just go ahead and start this single topic timestamp at a time of 8 minutes and 36 seconds. Okay. And this is the technical overview for Sound Signature Review 6223, the Otter Creek Labs Universe-36 on what? On the 10.3-inch 5.56 Mark 18, the 20-inch 308 bolt action, the 8.9-inch 9mm MP5. It's a multi-caliber test report. It's really comprehensive. And one of the questions that we always get asked, like a lot, and a lot of people get asked throughout the industry over the years is, do multi-caliber silencers perform well on several different weapons? And the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. And when you look at the Universe-36, you can put the silencer on anything from 9mm to 338 Lapua Magnum, and you're like, oh my gosh, my head is spinning with all the options. How could I possibly comprehend the performance gamut of what would happen with this silencer on all these different weapons? How would we be able to know that? Well, that's the question, or questions, that we answered with this report, and we hope that our answer to you. Okay, so we're going to go through subtopics Alpha through Foxtrot. We're going to go through an intro and recap. We're going to go through an overview of the silencer and its physical characteristics. We're going to go through the technical silencer design of the Universe-36. We're going to go through Hazard Map Brief 8.1.20, which gives a comprehensive spatial risk mapping for 3 different use cases of this silencer on different weapon systems. Then we're going to go through a technical summary of the system performance on all 3 systems, and then I'll give you my overall thoughts. So let's start the intro now at a time of 10 minutes and 17 seconds. Okay. One moment, please. I gotta get some water. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Alpha, intro and recap. Yeah, pretty short, just to remind you. Okay. It's a pretty interesting silencer. And again, as brand new silencer users, a lot of folks seek out a single silencer to suppress multiple guns. I mean, that is ubiquitous. And sometimes they're seeking one out to suppress all of the guns they have. And you know what, I will say, just to make you feel better, if you're one of those people, it's completely normal and a reasonable desire. It's when you're new to silencers, you're thinking, well, hey, I should be able to put this thing in all my guns. Maybe I can. Maybe I can experience all of my guns suppressed all at once. I've never shot a gun suppressed, and now I have a silencer. What can I put it on? It's like when sometimes if you get a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yeah, that's you when you get your first silencer, and it's you might think that. And it's okay. I think that's fair. I think it's a fair way. It's a fair way of thought, especially when you're new to this. Not everyone has the same level of education when it comes to silencers, and I can tell you it's very common to think like this. Now, is it a good idea? Well, it can be. I think it can be a good idea. Another question would be, well, do you leave performance on the table? Or can you leave performance on the table? And we have found in our research that the answer is yes, you can leave performance on the table. And Otter Creek Labs, they set out to make a silencer that's truly universal. I kind of like the name. They call it Universe-36 because it is appropriate to their design and use goal, universal silencer. A truly multi-caliber silencer. Not just in name only, though. Not just in name only. If you can fit something through this silencer, like that is if the bullet clears the baffles in a safe manner, the silencer will not explode and it will suppress the gunshot. And I know that sounds very simple, but it's really not simple. Because what I'm telling you is the combustion propagation from a Magnum rifle will not destroy this thing. It will actually work. I'm also telling you could probably put a rimfire thing through it and it'll work. And everything in between. And that's non-trivial. It's non-trivial for that to be the case with a multi-caliber silencer. It's not often you can put something on your MP5 and your 338 Lapua Magnum. It's not often. Okay. So the question you ask, well, how does it perform across the gamut of possible blast load inputs? As you vary the blast load in pressure and duration, that you're injecting into the silencer violently, how does it perform? How does it perform across the different crazy scenarios consumers would subject it to, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go to subtopic B, the general overview of the silencer at a time of 13 minutes and 32 seconds. Okay, so broad strokes, and I have it in front of me here, this little, and I do say little. I feel like it's way smaller than I think you realize. This thing is the Universe-36. It's 1.5 inch diameter, which is sort of a small diameter for typical silencers that you've seen used in multi-caliber fashions. Really, compare them. And it's hub compatible, and it's 7 inches long with no mount installed. And then when you look at the rear of the silencer, it has kind of big extra wrench flats to facilitate installation of the hub mounts, and that's what is it, 1.375 by 24. 24 thread per inch. That accommodation there on the rear, and when we tested the silencer, we used the direct thread mounts for each of the requisite weapon systems, and those direct thread mounts increased the length to 7.5 inches or so. So 0.5 inch length increase, that's probably what you should consider reasonable, considering we use direct thread mounts, and typically other types of mounts will be longer than that. So just call this 7.5, and you'll probably be, in the ballpark of what you're going to get with this thing, unless you're using some kind of really long, like chemo mount or something, God forbid. The silencer is constructed of Inconel, and it actually has a core that is derived from the Infinity technology from the Infinity 762 that you folks have seen us evaluate in the past on several different weapon systems. And because it's designed to pretty much take any cartridge that has a bullet that can fit through the silencer, that's probably a good choice. You know, they wanted to keep the weight down, right? So what do you do? What do you do to keep the weight down when you need something really strong? Well, for a silencer, a pressure vessel, you would want to make the diameter smaller so that it hit 1.5 inches, and you would want to use a high strength material that doesn't require super thick cross sections because its yield stress is really high. So Inconel 1.5 inch diameter seems to me like a pretty good universal platform to keep the weight down and cost down. I mean, I would think from an engineering standpoint. So the weight of this thing without a mount, it's only around 14.5 inches, less than a pound. And then you put, you put the mount's 2 ounces. Okay, so you're a little over a pound with the mount, which is pretty reasonable for a silencer like this with the features it has, I think. I mean, all things considered. Now you move to the end caps, and I have one of them here. I'm going to unscrew it. Just had it hand tight because I was looking earlier. The test sample we got, so this thing we got, it came with 3 different end caps. It came with the solid end caps, the 9mm bore, 7.62mm bore, and 5.56mm bore. So 5.56, 7.62, and 9. I am told that the retail package of the silencer comes with 1 end cap. It is a vented 9mm. So there's 6 end cap choices you can buy from Otter Creek Labs for this. 5.56, 7.62, and 9, solid and vented. So 3 different bore sizes and vent types. Non-vented or vented, 3 different bore sizes. That's 2 times 3. That's 6 variants. We use the 3 solid variants in the test program, and we'll talk about this in a moment. But if you choose to use the vented variants of either of the 3 end cap sizes, you will experience different response from the system, and you will have lower back pressure than the solid end caps have, just due to the way the Infinity core works, which we'll get into. I'll give you a refresher on that. Now, that's not to say that the solid end caps have super high back pressure with the silencer, but again, we're going to get into that in a moment, but the silencer is more complicated than just changing an end cap. Exterior view of the silencer, I mean, I think there's it's a positive utilitarian vibe, like a utilitarian feel to the Universe-36. The wrench flats are, they're pervasive throughout the design. You got those pronounced wrench flats on the proximal end of the silencer near the hub mount interface. You have traditional hex wrench features on each of the end caps. It's a very welcome feature set for folks that are changing things about the silencer all the time. And with a silencer like the Universe-36, I expect you probably will, especially if you're a new silencer user. So that's cool. The forward section of the silencer, it's textured similarly to that of an Infinity with a pseudo knurling. It's not really a knurling. It's a printed pattern. Gives you a little bit of a grip. It kind of looks fine. So it helps stylistically, it helps practically with grip, and this is a subjective feel for you, an opinion I'll give you. I think it also results in a silencer that might not have a look that everyone loves, but I don't know, I think perhaps the pronounced hex wrench features on the proximal end, perhaps they're a little off-putting for some people visually, aesthetically. I'm not sure. I mean, everyone likes different things. I'm not sure it really matters at the end of the day. But if you stick with me for a second on this, one of the big things here, and this plays right into that, actually, form follows function or function follows form, whatever you want to say. One of the big things here is that a practical elephant in the room is that this silencer is probably going to be doing subgun duty for a lot of people. And in that capacity, I'm pretty sure you can make this thing look like a traditional subgun silencer, which a lot of people might like. because remember, like, I know a lot of traditional subgun silencers are really large diameter, but then we went into this era. Think like Gemtech, Viper, and Raptor. Like, I know those are like old, like, but they're not like super fat. You know, like, I'm thinking like, I don't know, maybe even some Bauer stuff that he did a little smaller. I'm not trying to compare the silencers. I'm just talking about the aesthetic. Although Bauer's silencers are all smooth, but I'm just as were the Gemtech ones. But I'm just talking about like 1.5 inch diameter black silencer of this length. I could think of some traditional rolls where people might like it, and when you want to go shoot full size rifle with this thing, maybe you just take it off, you put it on the end of your rifle, you go to town, you're good to go anyway. I think as it stands, I really do think a lot of people are going to use this on a subgun. When you think about it, and in that role, it's probably not too far off aesthetically from some other subgun silencers we've seen over the years. That's the point I wanted to make. Just a long roundabout way to make that point, but I'm not necessarily defending how it looks, but I'm also saying I'm not mad about it. I've seen worse. Now, you might be wondering, how well does this silencer perform if it has a pseudo infinity core, but it's only 1.5 inches in diameter? And clearly the primary bore is sized for a 36 caliber projectile. Wow, you've really made this a tall order. Does changing end caps control that much of the performance? If you're handicapping with overbore and diameter, it's like, oh my God, how many design challenges can you throw at a dang silencer like this? How many compromises can you throw, I guess? And you think, well, how versatile is the performance? How does this core, this infinity core in this design, because remember, the normal infinity is way bigger diameter. How does this infinity drive core in this design envelope deal with the variable input pressure and duration across different combustion regimes? How does it fare? And how much is the combustion duration really pushing this in matter? How much does that matter? And so let's do that. Let's go into a little more technical detail now. Into the actual internal design at a time of 22 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay, one moment. Okay, silencer design. Here's where it gets a little bit interesting. Okay, because this thing it has an infinity core, and it of course has early vent structures inside the first expansion chamber, or the blast chamber, as folks know it. Now, even if you are not using a vented end cap in this silencer, you still have a relatively high early time flow rate, because those vents in the blast chamber are going to give access to places in the core more readily than a single bore aperture would from a single blast baffle center hole, for example. Okay, I'm simplifying this. Relieving of early time stagnation pressure in the first expansion chamber can really make quite a difference for semi-automatic weapon function in general. I think you'll see that. This is a feature of the Infinity that they brought to the Universe-36, albeit again in a smaller 1.5 inch diameter design envelope. And if you do need a refresher on the Infinity design, please see any of the number of test reports on our website and the podcast episodes as well. And there is a search feature on the top of the podcast page at pewscience.com/podcast if you need to find those episodes. In those episodes and reports, we go into quite a bit of detail on how the Infinity technology works and where the efficiencies are and where they aren't. So that might help you get a feel for this. I will say that in general, the Infinity technology seems to get overwhelmed with a lot of combustion volume. That is to say, we've noticed performance decreases, or at least a decrease in performance gains when you feed high pressure to an infinity core for longer amounts of time. And what's a good example for that? That's 7.62 NATO. Okay, we always thought that the Infinity 7.62 was really an optimized overboard 5.56 can. I don't think we're alone in that field. That's what the data shows, And there are reasons for that, but that's a whole nother episode. We've talked about that ad nauseum, I feel like now. And I will say another technical thing here. I believe I do feel like it's possible that the performance trait of an infinity core getting somewhat overwhelmed with stagnation or the consequences of partial stagnation might be exacerbated when you drop the diameter to 1.5 inches. And I think that's a reasonable thing to say or postulate due to volumetric expansion. When you drop diameter, you're significantly changing volume. Yeah, think about it. Think about the area term and what's squared, right? So just think about geometry, and I would really like to conduct some more detailed research studies on that. I do feel that this study with 3 separate tests is pretty good for seeing some of that play out, and I think that might be good to explore later in this talk. We'll probably talk about that a little bit, but I wanted to get your wheels turning on this and some of the design cues that they again, why did they do this? Why did they go 1.5 inches in diameter? And why did they pick Inconel? It's guys, your weight and cost. Okay. Remember that? What's that thing? Remember the triangle we always talk about in the podcast? The cost, schedule, and quality. Pick 2. Right? Cost, schedule, and quality. Pick 2. So it's good to understand that when you change from a solid end cap, whatever you're using, with an infinity core to a vented end cap with an infinity core, it does change the functionality of the silencer, because what's happening from the input side actually expands into regions where it's otherwise not likely to expand into when you change the end cap. And there's a technical reason about why this happens with the Infinity and some other silencers, but not all silencers. This is purposeful. When you look at the solid end cap of this silencer, for example, on the inside there's a flange ring. It mates to the inner diameter of the baffle throat, which is then surrounded by the baffle core ports that are coming from the infinity core annulus. And so so you're capping a ring. So when the end cap's fully installed and torqued on there, I can't see in there and I don't have a drawing, but I'm fairly certain that those annular vents are now isolated and essentially closed for reflection and closed for pass-through. And so, again, it's not like some other vented end cap systems that simply only vent from the main bore. And it's an important distinction here. It enables you to vent from the annulus, and it's sort of like a CGS system, kind of like Hyperion geometry that's used in the Helios or Helios QD or the smaller Hyperions or big Hyperions, whatever. Now, those technologies are a lot different than the Infinity, but with regard to annular venting and end cap changes, it's somewhat similar. So I just harken back to that. Sometimes people forget about that tech. The geometry of the first reflector of the Infinity core, or the blast baffle of an Infinity core, it is shaped such that erosion plays less of a part in its damage mechanism, or at least erosion is less likely to occur as quickly due to angle of incidence and the impinging blast jet and leading edges. If you look past the first, this is interesting. If you look past the first reflector to inside the core, you're going to see traditional baffle shapes start to be periodically repeated, and the baffle mouths are going to be traditionally shaped baffles, and they're more likely to experience erosion due to their geometry when they are in close proximity to blast jets. This is just how silencers work and jet nozzles work. And so really important thing to know about, and this is something that some new silencer owners don't know. This is not as much of a concern on low pressure and low duration combustion events from a pistol, for example. It's more of a concern with intermediate rifle cartridges and full-size rifle cartridges. And because the Universe-36 uses an infinity core, it therefore should be good on a variety of different combustion inputs as intended, with rifle or pistol, whatever. Now, just as an aside, a historical note that we've talked about before, but you should remember, there was a time when a lot of 9mm pistol silencers for use on pistols, meaning short barrel, unburnt powder blast jetting from pistols, even if it's low pressure, low duration, it's still from a pistol. A lot of pistol silencers were not using stainless steel blast baffles. They were all, all the baffles will be aluminum, and they'd even make an aluminum blast baffle. And what we found, in the community, was over time with a lot of use, that blast baffle would certainly erode a lot. And it wasn't necessarily because of the plasma jet. It's not like you're shooting on a rifle, you're shooting on a pistol, but what was happening was you had a lot of unburnt powder forming a kind of a blast matrix that was abrasive too, and it was just not great. It was some heat. It was heat too, of course, but it just on the aluminum, over time, it was a problem. So what they ended up doing was, on the really decent silencers, they ended up making stainless steel blast baffles, making tougher materials and changing geometries and kind of getting that a little more durable. And so I just wanted to bring that up, because we talk a lot about rifle versus pistol and damage mechanisms there. Back to the Infinity. Sorry on that little tangent. So you're going to see this in a moment as we go through the different hazards from the different tests. But when you change the distal orifice in each end cap without changing the orifice size through the entire core. So in other words, when you change the end cap hole without changing all the baffle holes, which is all you can do, because you can't change the baffle holes. You can only change the end caps. You're limiting your utility. You have a performance compromise built in. You're handicapped from the jump, because you can never change the bore size of the silencer. You can only change the end cap. So you're handicapped from the jump. When you change the exit aperture of an end cap, you're not doing the same thing as changing the entire bore aperture through the core. It does not mean that a degree of overbore for a given cartridge can't be efficient. I mean, we've seen that be efficient before, but it is likely that if the inefficiencies are going to happen, they're going to crop up sooner in this case. Okay? Or with this type of compromise. And that's right there is the entire argument for or against multi-caliber silencers. Forget about the weight, forget the size. Think about it's overbore. It's the whole argument for or against the damn products. This is multi-caliber silencers. I think when you see some designs do very well with overbore, like for example, when a 7.62 can does really well with 5.56, which can happen, the propensity of the user base might be to apply that rule like as a general rule of thumb across all silencers in the industry or something, to all different technologies. Like you might think, this 7.62 silencer worked on 5.56, so of course this one is too. Like that might be a tempting conclusion to draw. However, I think that would be a great mistake to draw that conclusion, because I think history has shown most overbored systems are inefficient when the jet diameter is significantly smaller than the bore diameter of the silencer. And a big controversy industry-wide and thus nationwide happened sometime before Pew Science was founded, when a lot of the silencer companies, that they were pushing the 30 caliber silencers as utility silencers for rifles that you could use on 5.56 with little to no performance detriment. Remember the SAM NS and stuff like that? You remember that stuff. Our research has shown, especially in the technical talk last episode with the JK Armament silencer, the recent, was it Procore? Yeah, the Procore 5.56K. Remember, 7.62 overbore for 5.56 is seldom efficient. Remember that chart of the top 5 and bottom 5 silencers in that report 222? Remember? Really, only the most advanced designs can give high performance suppression in those scenarios of overbore. And in one of those is what? Infinity 762. Huh, funny, right? Infinity 762 with a 5.6 end cap. But as you're going to see next in these hazard maps, the same is not true for the 36 caliber bore Infinity core in the Universe-36 using the 5.6 end cap. It's not the same thing. You've increased bore size and shrunk diameter? The humanity. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead now. Let's go to subtopic delta to look at the triple header hazard map brief at a time of 35 minutes. And 14 seconds. Okay, 1 second. Okay, we're making good time. I think this is going to be a short and sweet talk. Okay. Make sure I'm on the right spot. Yeah. Okay. Hazard map brief 8.1.20. You can pull this up at pewscience.com in section 8 of the Silencer Sound Standard. One of the reasons it's section 8 because I thought it was a little crazy. I think it's appropriate to name it that. Rather than like make a new website, right? Just like put another section in the standard. This hazard map brief, and by the way, this is public. You can follow along no matter if you remember or not. This hazard map brief, it's a little less brief than some of the others you've seen in Section 8 so far because it has 3 tests in it. You're going to see 3 maps, one for each of the 3 tests that are presented in Report 6223 for the Universe-36. So this is like an accompanying brief for the report. So if you look at nothing else, if you look at this brief first, you will see that you can see the results like super fast with barely even having to scroll, and then you'll have the whole answers unless you want to get into nitty gritty, and that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so let's start from the top. The first hazard map on the list is putting the Universe-36 on the standard untuned 10.3 inch barrel Mark 18 with solid 5.56 end cap. Okay, so what's the first thing you notice looking at this map? It's like, well, right away, I'll tell you what I see. I see a lot of bloom in the forward field. And keep in mind, I'm not necessarily talking about a bloom in blast overpressure. I don't want you to fall into this trap. These maps are risk space. These are not pressure maps. Okay, so what we are seeing is a lot of enhanced risk forward of the weapon system in this field. This indicates that there's a higher flow rate of combustion products, which does correspond to a more severe blast overpressure situation and more severe blast loads, yes, but it's important to note the nuance here is that the severity is tied to the hearing damage models used by the suppression rating. And okay, so you're tracking. So it's likely that other human hazards correlate strongly to the suppression rating, but they do not correlate 1-to-1. Okay, this is not a blast overpressure map, though there are some parallels. Because if it was a blast overpressure map, it would look different if it was peak overpressure. And if it was that, we wouldn't have to use a suppression rating. This would be way easier. Okay, cool. Now, a big takeaway from that part of the map, though, like basically from coordinate 00 to maybe coordinate 0.50, if you're looking at like a Cartesian coordinate system, top down, horizontal being the first ordinate and vertical axis being the second ordinate. So if you go from 00 to 0.50, this region of the jet, the big takeaway from this is that we've restricted the exit orifice with a tight 5.56 end cap, but there's still severe risk propagating in the forward field. You haven't choked the flow that much, have you? Look at this and look at the spread. When you look at the risk contour 1 meter left of the end cap, what's your risk contour sitting at? Well, it's around 26.5 suppression rating. That's significantly different from very high performance silencers that are much smaller than the Universe-36. So this is pretty telling. Okay, this right here tells you that it's not only expansion volume in a silencer that dictates muzzle blast suppression performance. And this is putting a nail in a coffin for an old wives' tale that was actually pervasive still today by some people in the industry. Let me say that again. It is not only expansion volume in a silencer that dictates muzzle blast suppression performance. It's not just volume, because if it were, this silencer would far outperform a Surefire 556 RC2 by far. But instead, you see that it does not even approach the suppression performance of an RC2 at the muzzle on average. And again, this is overwhelmingly due to the degree of overbore in the core, despite the tight end cap aperture of the solid 556 end cap. Okay? So put that to rest right now. If you're new to this stuff, I'm showing you. And I know a lot of you feel like this is like, well, of course, Jay, we knew that. But 6 years ago when we started this effort and you said that, you'd be burned at the stake. Because that was completely taboo to say. Because the silencer companies were telling you overbore was just fine. I'm telling you, dude. And it's not even that long ago. 6 years is nothing in the scope of things. So we've come a long way. Now, one thing we have done here by putting the tightest bore aperture in place with the 556 end cap, because remember, solid and tightest bore. So the 556 end cap is the most restrictive at the end. One thing we've done is we've restricted the distal flow and we have increased system back pressure. However, you will see that the ejection port blast is not necessarily that severe even with the back pressure increase. That is because, well, it is severe, but it's not that severe. And that is because of the early time flow rate of the Infinity core that's in the Universe-36. You're still getting a higher early time flow rate. And check this out. In this way, you're basically matching the operator protection in the free field of a Surefire SOCOM 556 RC2. The shooter's ear rating is similar, even though it's louder at the muzzle. Again, the shooter's ear protection on average is occurring despite the increase in forward field bystander hazard. So I know. So the flow rate's really high in early time. So all in all, if you're looking for a universal type silencer to suppress your 556 SBR and you're standing out in the middle of the field, it's protecting you similarly to a dedicated popular 556 silencer like the RC2. So if you're standing in the middle of a field and you're just the only one shooting, you're the one shooting, it's going to protect you like an RC2. But as we learned over the years and as showcased in Section 8 of the standard, if you put this setup near a reflecting surface, you're not going to be as well protected as you are with an RC2 probably because of the muzzle blast reflections. So, that's food for thought. And also more food for thought should be the fact that just because the risk near the operator is similar in the free field as an RC2, you're still going to hear a late time differential due to more severe forward field. So it's going to reflect. So don't think that the operator that shoots both of these setups is going to sound the same. Like, don't think you can put this on there and sound the same. And that's not how suppression rating works, right? Suppression rating is risk metric. And so for more information on that, you can see the modular pistol silencer reports and how with, the shooter's ear suppression ratings might stay similar for a long and short configuration of a pistol silencer on a pistol. But that's just looking at risk, not overall what your total audible signature over time. Okay, just again, refresh your memory if you've forgotten that. Let's move on to the next plot now. Let's look at 7.62 NATO out of the 20-inch bolt gun. So now what we've done, we've gone through with a 7.62 solid end cap. So now what we've done, we've gone from 5.56 NATO, which is an intermediate rifle cartridge. Now you're going to 7.62 NATO, which is a full-size rifle cartridge. We've increased the blast pressure inside the chamber, and we're increasing combustion duration. So now we've changed the end cap of the Universe-36 to the solid end, to the next solid variant, solid 7.62 bore. Again, the bore of the silencer itself is staying the same silencer, only the end cap exit aperture is changing. So now we've moved host type. We've moved from AR-15, and now we're using bolt action. So what used to have two primary sources of blast overpressure facilitating human risk now has only one significant source of blast overpressure, which is the end cap orifice of the silencer. It's not the only source, but it's the only significant source. Here is the end cap orifice. So theoretically, you would be thinking that maybe this risk field would be a lot safer for human beings, like throughout the whole field, given what I just told you, but you would be wrong. You would think it's a lot safer because you're only expelling overpressure from one source, but you would be wrong about that with this particular silencer. And this is where some of the inefficiency in the Infinity type core comes to light, especially when it's crammed into a 1.5 inch diameter design envelope. And so because of this inefficiency and because of the long duration of the high pressure combustion with 762 NATO, you're getting a very pronounced risk field that propagates both forward and after the muzzle. And the muzzle suppression rating has now dropped, half a category. You're about 26 something to 21. You're dropping half a category, 1 meter left of that end cap compared with that previous combustion input in the Mark 18. And because of that severe blast load increase that you're seeing there, the operator is not faring too well, even though they're not subjected to ejection port blast anymore because of the lock breech weapon, but the durations are a lot longer now. So actually, this operator suppression rating is extremely similar. It's almost the same as it was in the 5.56 SBR, and it's a bolt gun. So this is a really good data point to have, because you would think without knowing much about this technology, you would think that bolt action rifle would be safer. Maybe you want to use this for hunting scenario with your friends or your kid. And the fact of the matter is, that's not what this is optimized for, guys. It's just not. And it could be that the large degree of the overbore in the 36 caliber design is just handicapping the core. The Infinity core, I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's also a little bit of the standard inefficiency of how that core works. It's not all overbore. It's also the way the Infinity core works, I think. It's my theory. 1 second. I'm telling you, we found this in the full-size Infinity silencer too. If you want to review, I don't think I'm making a mistake there. Now, I would say that probably overall, this type of combustion regime is the most inefficient for the Universe-36. But I have a caveat here. I will say, and it's important to note, that just because it's inefficient does not mean it's not protecting you more than an unsuppressed gunshot. And that's really important to understand, because this is 7.62 NATO or 308, whatever you want to call it, full-size rifle cartridge. You can put this on a 338 Lapua Magnum, the silencer, and this thing isn't going to suppress 338 Lapua Magnum to the levels of a dedicated high-performance 338 Lapua Magnum silencer would, but it's going to be significantly safer than an unsuppressed Magnum rifle. That's very important. And you'll see also there are some actually better consistency to the 7.62 NATO combustion out of the Universe-36 that we'll see in the hard data we'll look at soon after these models. Doesn't mean it's not dangerous, it just means it's more consistent. Why? Because the degree of overbore is less. We'll talk about that later. Now, finally though, in this hazard map brief, we'll move on to the final and third map. Scroll down. In figure 3 here of this brief, MP5. Now, what have we done? We've changed things quite a bit. Now we're using an end cap with, again, solid front face, except for the exit aperture of 36 caliber. It's that 9mm bore end cap. Just like the namesake of the Universe-36. Now your end cap aperture is matching your bore aperture to the max, and the input to the silencer is now very low pressure and very low duration. And 36, it's a 9mm input, and compared to the previous two rifle tests, you're really low pressure, really low duration. We're using subsonic 9mm ammunition, specifically Speer Lawman 147 grain. Now remember, this is full power subsonic 9mm ammunition, and sometimes I think people find that phrase funny when I say full power subsonic, because they think of subsonic ammo as weak. But it's important to note that not all subsonic 9mm ammunition is created equal, and there exists a lot of different supposed suppressor friendly or suppressor optimized or specialized ammunition that people like to sell to be as quiet as possible. And that's not the type of ammunition we like to use for testing, because we like to use 9mm ammunition that mimics the use of self-defense rounds, so you understand how the answer will be for real life and the ammo you actually use. And it could be conservative. Okay, conservative is good. So what else are we doing? We're moving back to a semi-automatic weapon. First, we were on the 10.3-inch Mark 18 semi-auto. Then we're on 20-inch bolt gun. Now we're going back to semi-auto 8.9-inch barrel MP5. So you look at figure 3, you notice anything different like right away without even reading it? Well, an awful lot of green, right? Remember, green safe, red dangerous.
color-coded for you. You see a lot of green. Why? It is safer. Remember, truly hearing safe is when you're like super green, 90 to 100 or so. Anything below that's putting you at risk. Okay? Something that happens with the Universe-36 with low pressure and low duration combustion input is really controlled jetting. You can see that in the map. Well, it's at least as controlled as an Infinity Core is going to give you in this envelope, but way more controlled than jets you saw in the other two maps, isn't it? Analytically, in PuSoft HD code here, we're showing you the stability index shoots up to 1. Now, again, I told you this before a while back, but those stability indexes on the plots, they're more for us than for you. But we're just listing them there for the record, so don't get too hung up on that, but you can generally know that as they're changing and getting higher, it's more stable. You can see that the forward suppression rating contour of 60 hits the 1 meter standoff mark, which is really, really important for this risk field. The Universe-36 is doing very well on a standard MP5. You can see that the 40 risk contour is right near the shooter's head, which is, again, a great place to be. Now, is this the most efficient MP5 silencer? No, of course it's not. But is it a more efficient MP5 silencer than it is a 308 bolt gun silencer? Absolutely, dude. And that's what these maps are supposed to show you. These maps are supposed to show you risk and set your expectations for using a silencer on different weapon systems, like real quick. Okay, now one nuance of note here, and it's something that I'm not sure a lot of people realize, is that MP5s do in fact have ejection port blast hazards. It wasn't that long ago in the industry that some silencer manufacturers would tell you that MP5s don't have ejection port blast for some reason because they're delayed blowback, and they just like, oh, it's fine. I recall some specific conversations centering around the Wolfman silencer, for example. It just so happens that the Wolfman has some of the highest back pressure of modern subgun silencers that you're going to see, even though it was marketed as having low back pressure. Okay, and it also just so happens that the Universe-36 roughly matches the muzzle suppression performance of a Wolfman in the Wolfman's long configuration, and exceeds the shooter's ear protection of Wolfman on this gun. Why? Because of the higher early time flow rate of the Universe-36, even with the solid 9mm end cap. That's right. Yeah. Would you get less ejection port blast hazards if you used the vented 9mm end cap with this silencer on this gun? Yeah, probably. But that doesn't necessarily mean, again, that the shooter's ear risk near the shooter's head would be safer. That's because the muzzle blast will then coalesce, and it could be more severe with the vented end cap. We don't know. And remember, the Universe-36 comes standard with the vented 9mm end cap, and we have not tested that. I would be interested to learn about your experience. If you choose to get one of these silencers, you will have that, so let me know how it goes. Okay, so that concludes the broad overview of the personnel hazards using the hazard maps. This was the point of the hazard map brief. Give you big picture, quickly, easy to understand way. We just, in 20 minutes, we covered 3 tests in huge, give you more information than anyone could possibly give you about the silencer. Isn't that cool? It was cut with colors. Now we can get more nerdy and a bit more complicated. Let's look at the full data real quick, and we're going to try to do this fast because, frankly, we don't want to beat a dead horse at a time 53 minutes and 22 seconds. Okay. Since we've gone through it in such detail already, if you don't know how the silencer works by now, you're about to. Go ahead and pull, so system performance in detail, pull up report 6223 and check it out. You can follow on with the free version just fine at pewscience.com. But if you're a PewScience member, go ahead and view the members only report, and it will give you more information. Okay, read it on your own time, put it in your favorite AI tool, and learn. It'll help you summarize. There's no shame in using AI as long as you understand the source information. Okay, it's a long report. We did something we don't typically do. We put all the tests in the one report. We got some good feedback on this. We were not sure what you would think about it. The feedback was universally positive, so thanks for letting us know. Thanks for letting me know what you thought. At the top of the report, you will have the 3 main suppression rating graphics and a corresponding hazard map right next to each graphic. It's the same maps that we just went through together, but if you are just tuning in for this topic and you didn't listen to the hazard map brief subtopic, the maps are there near the suppression rating graphic. We are not going to go through the maps again. If you want to learn about that, rewind. Okay, we're going to go bottom line up front for each of the tests. Bottom line up front for Mark 18 with a 5.56 end cap on the Universe-36. 10.3 inch barrel, AR-15, 5.56. 26.6 suppression rating at the muzzle, 22.4, 16 inches right of the shooter's right ear. Composite suppression rating, 28.4. Okay, 1 second. Bottom line up front for the 308 bolt gun with 7.62 end cap. Now you're going 21.1 at the muzzle, 22.6 at the ear. Composite suppression rating at 25.4. Okay. Bottom line up front for the MP5, 9mm end cap, subsonic ammo, 60 at the muzzle, 39.4 at the ear, 60 composite. So broad strokes, just like we spoke about earlier, you're getting the highest performance by far with the MP5 when using the silencer, as one would expect. And no matter what high pressure rifle you put it on, your risk is not that low. So don't expect miracles from the Universe-36. I think that's the big thing. So if you scroll down to figure 1 in the report, let me see. It's a bar chart. The same results we just talked about are displayed in a bar chart if you learn better that way. Comparative visual there for you. Some people compare the bars better than they do just strict numbers. Also, the unsuppressed risk factors for each of the 3 weapon systems are there. So you're going to have 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to have 6 pairs of bars, so 12 bars total. You have unsuppressed and suppressed with the Universe-36 for each of the weapon systems. And I want you to pay particular attention to the unsuppressed MP5 and how much safer that is than an unsuppressed rifle. Save that for a rainy day. Now, is it safe to fire an MP5 unsuppressed without hearing protection? No, it's not safe, but is it safer than firing a rifle unsuppressed? A lot safer. A lot safer. All right, now let's get more technical. Scroll down to figure 2, I believe. Let's see. There's a lot more you can read here. There's 3 big points that we've already talked about, really. But I want those. You already know those. But read them again. Figure 2. We're going to talk about blast physics here. Blast overpressure in the free field on the Mark 18. To sum this up quickly, you're going to see decently controlled combustion here, but the bolt speed's a little bit higher than you would think. Solid end caps fighting that early time full rate. They're fighting each other. Then you have another anomaly. And this is kind of like, I wouldn't say the smoking gun, but it's a huge conclusion from this. And it's really important for you to understand the uncontrolled combustion that starts after propagation, that starts after FRP, and it doesn't settle down until shot 5. That's that primary overbore in the core. It even with the 5.56 end cap, guys, this is resulting in the Universe-36 being similar at the muzzle in global suppression to a Knight's Armament 5.56 QDC CRS PRT. Way bigger than the Knight's, but similar overall risk because that it runs away. Not great, not terrible. Knight's can is not bad, but you know what I mean? It's a good peg point if you understand, right? And we have the data to be able to show you that. That's the power of the suppression rating, remember? It's cool. Now, back pressure is not as low as it would be if you use the vented end cap. That's important to know. That end cap, the vented end cap, would help you reduce gas to your face, but the extra muzzle blast could hurt you more at the ear. So it would be interesting to test. Now, if you're a Pew Science member, and this is important, if you're a Pew Science member in the full report, you can see the shooter's ear waveforms, and you'll see what I'm talking about with regard to muzzle blast influencing shooter ear risk. And how do you know that definitively, guys? Even if you're not a blast analyst. How would you know this definitively? Well, you would see the erratic combustion propagation in the impulse space in figure 5A and 5B, and you would see that those directly match the shots and the timing at the shooter's head that they do at the muzzle, that you saw those erratic combustion traces. And so what's happening here? The overbore is hurting you throughout the field, even with the solid end cap. So then imagine a vented end cap. Context clues, guys. You're smart enough now. Broad strokes, and I'll just read this to you because it's easy. Universe-36 and a Mark 18. At the muzzle, you're competing with Nomad 30, the Knights can I just talked about, the KGM R556, the LPM Vented Torch, the Surefire RC3, the Q Trash Panda. Good context. There's plenty of data points for you to understand. At the ear, in the free field, you're competing with RC2, RC3, Helios QD, solid end cap torch, the Knights can again, the Infinity with the 556 end cap. Not great, not terrible. And that's like the theme of that Mark 18 stuff. Let's go to the 308 data. Scroll down even more. What is it, figure 7? Yeah. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna increase combustion pressure, we're gonna increase duration, and we're gonna decrease something. What are we gonna decrease? We're gonna decrease the degree of overbore relative to the input jet. Key distinction, stick with me. Because now you have a bigger jet diameter to the 36 caliber bore. Now there's a pleasant surprise here. And I know it's super loud on 308, like we talked about in the hazard map stuff, but there's something we've learned about the Infinity core the Universe-36 uses, something we've learned a lot about overbore cases. You have much more consistent combustion propagation. You, in this case, and you have a slight runaway in shot 3. Look in, was it figure 8? 8A. Look at figure 8. You get a slight runaway at shot 3 and at its peak in the momentum propagation, but it's very tame compared with what happened with 556. So now you're more controlled, but you're still hazardous. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off. How is the performance stacking up? Well, at the muzzle, you're hitting things like Gemtech Neutron, Silencer Central Banish 30 short config, the Rugged Surge short configuration, the short Hyperion K, the Savage AccuCan. Not too shabby for a 36 caliber silencer in that part of the field, but propagating to the operator, now you're not doing so hot. Now, what levels are you hitting now in risk? Well, you're hitting like Surefire SOCOM 762 Mini 2, Dead Air Sandman K, Griffin Explorer, YHM Resonator K. Like you're wearing hearing protection. 308 bolt gun. We're hearing protection with this silencer, for sure. Okay, now MP5, a lightning round. You already know these answers. I already told you. Figure 12. I know I'm going fast, but like you have the technology. You can read this yourself, and we've talked about the hazards at this point ad nauseum. In figure 12, you're back to normalcy. All is right in the world. I mean, you should be thinking when you put this on MP5, why? Look at the blast overpressure. And then look at the impulse in figure 13. And what are you seeing technically here? Your combustion propagation is back into efficiency land. Why? Appropriately sized bore. And your pressure and duration have dropped significantly in the input stream from subsonic 9mm compared to the rifle, the intermediate rifle and full rifle cartridges we talked about earlier. So now you're doing pretty well. And there's a key thing I want to make, a key point here I don't want you to freak out about the FRP, because if you look carefully at the first round pop from the Universe-36 in figure 13, you will see that I don't want you to get scared, because there's a delayed onset of FRP divergence. It's actually not too bad, and the FRP will sound different to you, but it's not going to be unreasonably more hazardous to you, and that's important to know. And it's a similar story at the shooter's ear for members. If you go, let me scroll down here to the member section here. Member section. Guys, big takeaway here. You're hitting Wolfman levels of performance with a higher flow rate, lower back pressure with a solid end cap. If you like shooting a Wolfman on an MP5, a Universe-36 is going to be just as good, if not better for you. And you could also put it on a 338 Lapua Magnum and not blow it up and get hurt. And then if you want to, you put a vented end cap on it if you want to mag dump into trash with ears on an MP5, and you probably have a really good shooter experience like that. I think I was talking to Andrew about that. He probably does that. Sometimes you want to mag dump into trash and you don't want any gas. Put the vented end cap on the Universe-36 and go to town. I think it's probably how I would view the Universe-36 in this context. And as a matter of fact, let's just do that. Let's just give overall thoughts at a time of 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 54 seconds. Okay. 1 second. And that's how I would conclude this in my overall thoughts, actually. Given that statement I just made, I think the Universe-36 is a subgun silencer that can be used on whatever other weapon you want to. I think if you view it like that, you're going to be not disappointed. What is that opinion on? Is that opinion on what Otter Creek Labs says? No, that's not on their website. That's not what they're saying in marketing. How would I be able to give you such a confident opinion about the silencer? How would I be able to say, I think the Universe-36 is a subgun silencer that you can also use on whatever else you want? How can I say that so confidently when the manufacturer didn't say that? It's because it's based on the test data. It's because it's based on the physics. Guys, that's the value of this, I think. I think this is why this is an important study. We usually don't see multi-caliber or universal silencers advertised like that at all. And the first reason is because they're typically not designed to go all the way to Magnum use. And secondly, I'm not so sure folks selling the silencers want you to know that they're most efficient close to the intended bore size. They might dance around that, but they're not going to come out and say it. And to be clear, a corollary to this, and don't get it twisted, just be careful. Will every multi-caliber silencer follow this rule of thumb? Like, will every multi-caliber silencer be very efficient next to its native bore diameter? And I mean, maybe not. And maybe that's a dangerous guess to make. I think we need to do some more multi-caliber studies to really see how different technologies stack up, probably. That's what I would say. I can tell you with traditional silencers, I think back pressure is going to be much more of a problem than it is with the Universe-36. Universe-36, even with the solid end cap, has a lot going for it. It has a lot of high early time flow rate, even the muzzle bus gets control, even, and I tell you what, if you have pick one, I don't know, Silencer Co. Omega 36M. We haven't tested it, but I want to. I bet you the overbore there doesn't help you as much as you think with back pressure, and I bet you it has high back pressure. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I could be wrong. I'll admit it if I'm wrong when we test it, but I bet it has higher back pressure than this. I'd like to test that and see how it stacks up. Just because remember, that harkens back to a time when, just make the bore bigger, lower the back pressure. Well, if that was the case, why the hell did Otter Creek vent the freaking blast chamber? Yeah, come on, guys. You know what I mean? I think it'd be a cool comparison. We should probably test that silencer. So that's all for today. I tried to go as fast as I could through this to hit every single performance element of the silencer. We hit how the risk increases in each case, and we also hit how in the 7.62 case you had more consistency due to the lower degree of overbore from 5.56, and then you had the grand finale with the 9mm, how you are doing a pretty good job as a native subgun silencer. And I hope the comparisons with all the competitor products to the silencer help you understand how it performs overall on any weapon you would choose to use it on. Now, if you want to extrapolate this to Magnum, or you want to go down below 9mm to like 22, we can do that. We can talk about that. But hopefully these points between which you can interpolate performance are helpful, especially with the hazard maps. Okay? That's all for today. I hope you found it informative. I would ask that you please stay safe, stay dry out there. It's raining everywhere. April showers hopefully will bring May flowers. Please have fun, go shooting. I will talk with you folks again soon. Okay, bye.